After 6 weeks, thousands killed and huge disruption across the global economy, the United States and Iran have agreed to a 14-day truce. That news coming hours before Donald Trump's deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face the destruction, he said, of its whole civilization. Now today, Donald Trump on Truth Social says the United States will work closely with Tehran. He went on to say that Iran is going through what he called very productive regime change. He says Iran will cease its enrichment of uranium. Now, Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary of the United States, has also been speaking today. He claimed the US have decimated the Iranian military. Take a listen.
Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. You see, in less than 40 days, one of our combatant commands, Central Command, CENTCOM, using less than 10% of America's total combat power, dismantled one of the world's largest militaries.
Well, let's speak to Ali Vaez on the programme now. He's the director of the Iran project at the International Crisis Group. Hello to you, and thanks for speaking to us here on France 24.
Good to be with you.
Help us get the big picture here, if you can. Hegseth there claiming Iran's military has been decimated. Strategically, though, do you think this ceasefire is a win for Iran?
Well, it is a win in a way because the regime survived. The bar was so much lower for the Iranians than was the case for Israel or the United States. Just the sheer fact that they survived in the face of an onslaught by two nuclear powers, the world's sole superpower, the region's biggest military power, from the Iranian perspective, is a victory. Now, there are additional elements in the Iranian narrative of victory. The seeming recognition by President Trump that Iran would remain in control of the Strait of Hormuz in and of itself is a major plus. And the fact that President Trump has also, in his social media posts, has admitted that the 10-point plan that Iranians have put on the table is the basis of negotiations that are going to take place in Pakistan. That doesn't mean the U.S. has accepted all of Iran's 10-point plan, but at least it is the basis. And that, again, in the Iranian narrative of victory, features largely. This is without denying, of course, that there have been serious setbacks that Iran has suffered in this war.
And look, you said, in a sense, this is a victory for the Iranian regime because the regime has survived. But to listen to Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, I mean, they say things like, not just today, over the past few weeks, that there's a new regime in Iran, that new people are running Iran. There was Donald Trump last week, I believe, talking about a new president in Iran. I mean, is there any truth to any of that there has been some kind of regime change?
Well, that's an alternative fact. It is true that the regime has transformed in the sense that there are new faces, often much more hardline individuals who have occupied the place of those who have been killed in this campaign. But the regime, the Islamic Republic, is still there. There is still a Khamenei who is in charge of the Islamic Republic. And everybody else is basically hardline figures within the Revolutionary Guards. I would say the main thing that President Trump has achieved politically is that he has swapped the balance of power between the office of the Supreme Leader, which really sat at the pinnacle of power in Iran, and the Revolutionary Guards, which was subservient to it. Now the Revolutionary Guards is really calling the shots in the country, and the new leader, former Supreme Leader's son, is not really supreme. Even if he's alive and he's not incapacitated, he is going to be completely beholden to the Revolutionary Guards.
Well, let's talk about these various plans, the ways ahead, the 10-point plan, the 15-point plan. Something that Donald Trump said in his Truth Social post today is that Iran will cease enrichment of uranium. Is it plausible that this regime might actually have agreed to that?
Look, this has been a contentious issue from the beginning, not just in the run-up to this war, but in the run-up to last year's war, in President Trump's first term in office. It has always been a problem. And I don't think that there would be any realistic scenario in which Iran would officially forego the right to enrichment. It is, however, possible that it would forego the practice of enrichment, which has been a fact on the ground since June of last year in the 12-day war, when Iran's nuclear program was severely degraded by US and Israeli strikes. That is a possibility, but it also would require recognition of Iran's right to enrichment, which so far we don't know if President Trump is going to accept or not.
And Ali, look, earlier on in the programme, we were speaking to a journalist in Beirut who was giving us a sense of the extensive Israeli attacks on that city today. Now, there has been a lot of ambiguity as to whether or not Lebanon is part of this Iran ceasefire deal. And something the journalist there was suggesting was that actually Iran might view what has happened in Lebanon as Israel breaking the ceasefire and use that as a sort of justification to continue this war, to continue strikes. From your perspective, does that strike you as something that we could see in the coming days?
It is possible, because what we saw in this conflict was that for the first time, Hezbollah entered into a war with Israel, not just based on its own calculations and interests, but on behalf of Iran. And Iran had promised that if the war comes to an end, it would be a regional end to the conflict. So it would be hard, I think, for the Iranians not to respect that promise to Hezbollah and just let them be pummeled by Israel, which is one of the other additional reasons that this ceasefire might prove to be very fragile. And if Iranians continue to fire missiles towards Israel, Israel is likely to retaliate. And that brings the US again to a decision point. Is it going to hold Israel back to end the war in Lebanon as well, or to put that on hold, or is it going to allow this whole thing to fall apart?
And just a final thought from you on Pakistan. It appears to be the country that has led the negotiations to get this ceasefire to the point we're at now. How close would you say relations are between Iran and Pakistan?
They are very close. I mean, they're neighbors and they're friendly relations. And what also matters in the case of Pakistan at this moment is really the Pakistani military who is calling the shots in these negotiations and has connections with the Revolutionary Guards, which, as I said, is the key actor in Iran right now. And the Pakistani military also has a very good relationship with the Trump administration. So they are well placed to play this role.
All right, Ali Vaez talking to us there. He's the Iran project director at the International Crisis Group. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.